We are live, fans, once again on the Hannibal TV on YouTube with another edition of the Hannibal TV this week, the news show that is really getting positive feedback from all the fans and subscribers of the Hannibal TV. We greatly appreciate it, greatly appreciate your input, and we've got some interesting stuff to talk about today. But before we get into all of that, we will, as Hannibal just pulled up there, we'll answer questions. Please participate, and we very much value the interactive aspect of this show. I'm Jack Kilby, but before we get into all the stories, of course, there is the godfather of the Hannibal TV, Hannibal himself.
Yes, and I just wanted to mention we also just did a half-hour members-only podcast where we covered some controversial topics. So if you become a member of the Hannibal TV, you will have access to that, and you'll be helping us out to get better and better interviews. Next week, I got Don Morocco, so it's just talking about the members-only podcast. Sunday, Larry Zabisco, too. So make sure you subscribe. And remember, it's like $1.99 a month. We are going to do these members-only podcasts. I always prioritize members' questions when they put comments. And if we can get enough, I'll be blunt, we've got like 40 now. But every penny helps. If we can get enough, I'll actually do extra interviews with stars for members if it becomes worth our while. But for now, we just want to do something for the people that are helping support the channel and see where it goes.
Yeah, and as a total shoot, the members only discussions are definitely going to be ones that you're going to want to hear and be a part of, because we don't hold back in those. And to use the term that the kids say these days, the last one was very, very spicy. Want to talk about the news of the week. Some interesting stuff, seemingly a little slower than usual, but I think we'll start off with the new Dark Side of the Ring season has been announced. It's going to start on the 25th of this month. And the first show will be Mick Foley versus The Undertaker, looking at that Hell in a Cell match, which is, very mythologized to this day. Then they're going to cover the original Sheik, who, of course, was one of the best drawing heels in history. And Brian Solomon had a great book. There's an interview with him on this channel, Blood and Fire, the story of the Sheik. Check that out. Search that out on the channel. It's the man had a fascinating life. Tony Atlas, a friend of the Hannibal TV and Hannibal himself, will be profiled. Muhammad Hassan and Eddie Gilbert. That's one I'm really going to look forward to, considering his brother Doug is going to be a part of the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance One and Done show on May the 3rd in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He will be in a tag team encounter with Tommy Wildfire Rich against the franchise Shane Douglas and a mystery partner. A big fan of Hot Stuff, as Jake Walker just said. Daphne, her tragic story. Superstar Billy Graham, a personal friend of Hannibal, and numerous interviews on this channel. For the younger fans that aren't familiar with Superstar, what a legend. I'll be interested to see what type of treatment the Dark Side folks give to him. And Ludwig Borga, Tony Holm, a very controversial figure. I always thought he could have gone farther in the WWF than he did, but the man had demons, and by all accounts was not a very nice individual, to say the least. But that will be must-see TV, I think. And then they're going to finish up the season with another man who is a personal friend of Hannibal, and unfortunately, or whatever term you want to put on it, remains incarcerated, and that would be one Billy Jack Haynes. Hannibal, I know you have been on an episode of Dark Side of the Ring. You reviewed a lot of the seasons. What do you make of that lineup? I think it sounds great.
Matt, I just want to tell you I was actually talking to John Nord today, so you must be telepathic. John will be back on very, very soon. Probably next week or the week after, I would say. And again, Larry Zabisco, Sunday at I think 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm disappointed they didn't use me for the Billy Graham or the Billy Jack Haynes. They have some sort of grudge against me because they buried me in the episode that they did on me. They wanted Billy Graham, actually a little secret for the episode that they did on me, but he was unwilling to do it. He didn't want to do it for the money that they were offering. Vader, they are using some of my footage for Vader's. They did pay me to use some of my Vader footage. I had one of Vader's last interviews. As far as Billy Jack Haynes, and yes, Pat Tanaka coming up. Sorry, we're clicking on it at the same time. As far as Billy Jack Haynes, he's got a lawyer that I really don't have a lot of respect for. I don't like his lawyer. I mean, his lawyer should not be letting him do Dark Side of the Ring before his trial with the way this guy talked. And you know this, Jack. And I will, the other thing about his lawyer, I mean, his lawyer has sent me some very weird messages, and his lawyer has given me some messages that a close friend of his that talks to him regularly in prison and has helped with some of his financial situations in prison says that I've got some messages from the lawyer that Billy says he didn't say. So I don't know. I really don't know who to believe or what to believe. All I can tell you is I got some really weird messages from the lawyer. And me personally, I know this guy. I know Billy claimed to be a millionaire or whatever, or have all this money stashed away. This, from what I understand, is just like an appointed lawyer. And I wouldn't expect to see him as a free man, given like that this guy, for instance, is letting him do Dark Side of the Ring. Which, again, I do know that they did a long interview with him. He was at the jail. They were at the jail with him for a long time. He thinks in Billy Jack Haynes' mind that they're going to use the whole interview. I can tell you for the one I did with Abdullah, it was about 6 hours long. They used seconds of it, and then they like chopped it up. Like at one point, they just take me saying, "Oh, things didn't go as planned," but they don't give any of my whole explanation. They use it in the context that made me look bad. And they knew Abdullah the Butcher could read, for instance, in mine. By the way, a guy that has apparently Chinese bank accounts. They knew Abdullah the Butcher could read, but I showed them letters because they asked me about it. And I'm like, these are letters. But then they still spent so much time on that episode trying to put the propaganda out there that you can't read, which you can read. I mean, anyone that knows him knows that he did text messages. But
including me, he text messaged me a lot wanting to get an interview on the channel. So that's bullshit.
And again, many people said, anyways, he had businesses. He's a very successful guy. He's not an honest person at all. We don't need to go down that road. Billy Graham, I was the closest young wrestler to him, without question, for like the last 12 years of his life. He was like a grandfather figure to me. So that's really unfortunate that they aren't getting my side of the whole Billy saga, because I was in contact with him up until the point where he could no longer communicate. So that one's sad because I truly love Billy Graham. And for Billy Jack, he literally talked to me. He tried to call me 45 minutes before he committed the murder.
Wow.
That's how I initially got in contact with the lawyer, because the lawyer was asking me about it. So it's like, you're not going to use, anyways. I'm just saying I would have liked to have got my side out there for it. They're not going to use me for whatever reason, as even though I don't necessarily like the people involved in it or trust them, because they act the whole time they were with me, oh, as if they were friends with me, right? They're very good at that type of thing. And then they asked numbers for me. Like I think they were going to do something on Sid at one point, and they wanted to get in contact with Sid. So you'll ask me for favors, then you'll just bury me. But what was I going to say? For Billy, that one will be interesting. Vader, that should be interesting. I hope they don't bury Billy, but we know Jim Cornette has buried Billy in the past. Billy is one of the nicest guys, and I truly look at him as a grandfather figure to me. I was just thinking about him yesterday. I don't know why he popped into my head, but I was thinking about him yesterday. And when I had my near-death experience a couple of years ago, which was about as close to death as you can get, I truly credit Billy and my grandmother on the other side somehow playing a role in keeping me alive. I truly believe that. And part of the reason why I had that experience was losing Billy. It really bothered me. That was a bad year for me because Billy, he was my grandfather and he was my mentor. And again, one of the saddest things about that is I was the last guy Billy mentored. He wrote promos for me. He watched my matches. He critiqued my matches. He tried to get me in WWE. He wrote a recommendation letter to Gerald Briscoe, which Briscoe tried to get me an NXT tryout in 2016. Then they mysteriously canceled it after I was accepted. But Billy wanted me in WWE so he could be my advisor. It's too bad that never happened for that reason alone. Because could you have imagined like having him to advise me every week? But yeah, great guy, temperamental, extremely temperamental. I was the victim of his temper a couple times. But you can understand why he was temperamental and why he was bitter in some ways too. But overall, he would literally give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. And is a great guy deep down. Just look at how long his marriage with his wife Valerie lasted. They were together, and which, by the way, I think she was 19 and he was 33 or 34 when they met. She is an angel. She is a true angel. He wouldn't have lived to 79 if it wasn't for Valerie. And I'm sure, I have a feeling she might be in this. I honestly don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'll assume maybe Bill Anderson, because those two were very close. I would say like Bill Anderson knew him for longer than me, so I don't claim to be anywhere near the relationship that Bill had with him. But I would say I'm the only wrestler of the younger generation that literally had daily. We messaged each other every single day, and I did document his career very well for the past like 12 years before he died. But yeah, I'm glad that they're at least doing something on him. Those are the Billy Jack, the Vader, and the Billy Graham are the ones I'm most interested in. And as I was going to say, despite some of the people involved with that being slime balls, in my opinion, and two-faced, I would say that I still watch it. It's still more entertaining than WWE and AEW. I still watch it. I even watched Dark Side of the Cage. That I'd rather watch stories about the old wrestlers that were so entertaining than anything from the new wrestlers. That's just a fact. So even if I don't like the people, I'll at least be honest and say, hey, the show's entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can argue with that. It'll just be interesting to see how they treat those. And coming from a criminal justice career and background of many decades, I think you're right there in terms of Billy Jack doing an interview while things are still before the courts being interesting.
And I think I showed you one of the last messages he sent me, and it's like, what kind of lawyer sends that to a wrestler? What that doesn't even. That's just weird. And he left me alone after that response, but it's like, seriously, man, are you in high school?
Yeah, very strange, and no doubt these episodes will draw eyeballs, and especially the Billy Jack and Billy Graham. I'm sure you'll talk about in detail.
For sure. And Billy Jack, I guess, didn't want his lawyer talking this, which if anyone should have put a comment, it should have just been some comment from the lawyer. But he really, the same girl that I'm friends with, Clarissa, will give her a shout out. She recently got married. Very nice person. She's a saint. She takes care, his old cellmate, she takes care of the cellmate's kids plus her own family's kids. So she's a true saint. But like, Billy wanted to be on Dark Side of the Ring so bad. This is where his mind is right now. All he wants to do is like to be on Dark Side of the Ring to, in his mind, not be remembered like OJ Simpson, because somehow he thinks they're going to present him in a way that's going to make the public think of him in a good way. So we'll see how it turns out.
Definitely be entertaining. One of the other very high profile interviews of the past week was Scott Steiner on a very high profile show, and he talked specifically about Hulk Hogan. I know you've talked about the recent appearances that were less than satisfactory, so to speak, but the name came up, and
I'll just say one thing about his appearances. The people that are saying, well, he's old, he shouldn't have to do it. First of all, he agreed to them and he's getting paid for them. So don't agree to them if you can't fulfill them and then disappoint people. That's just my thoughts on it, because I've got some hate. Oh, he's old, leave him alone if he doesn't want to do the appearance, or only do half of the time, or show up to an autograph session and not do any autographs.
yeah, I think you're 10,000% right there. But the name came up, Hulk Hogan, and it was asked specifically if he still had heat with him. And I'll read you this quote and get your thoughts when done. Hannibal, he says, "What am I going to do now? But I don't forget. There's a reason he got booed in California. All the stuff that came with him, racist comments. Now, you would never found out that it wasn't recorded behind closed doors if it wasn't recorded behind closed doors. So I think a lot of people realize the perception that WWE or WCW wanted of Hulk Hogan was really not him. The racist comment, Hogan and Savage. I was good friends with Savage. Well, I knew all the stories he used to tell me about all the stuff. Then, of course, the one time he tried to put me in jail, I was facing serious time. I could have been in jail for 15 years. And that was an incident before WrestleMania several years ago where it was alleged that Steiner assaulted Hogan's wife on the alleged impetus of Hogan, but there was video footage that showed that it didn't occur. So Big Papa Pump, not perhaps maybe tempered because of Braun Breaker and his own son. And I hear he's got another son who's an accomplished athlete, but he still tells it like it is from his perspective about Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked at that in a way, because I know, for instance, I've tried to get an interview recently with him, and I think the reason he declined me is because I'll definitely ask the controversial questions that might get him heat with WWE when his kids and nephew are, like, his one kid is signed to the football contract. His nephew's in there, so I could understand him not. He may have just been caught in a question and said it. I would be surprised if he actually had the intention of going into that interview and burying him. But the interesting thing about people burying Hogan now, this is very interesting. Seth Rollins has even buried Hulk Hogan recently. Mark Henry, Undertaker. There's people in WWE burying Hulk Hogan, where you wonder, like, how sincere WWE is in their partnership with him and the beer to now I'll say Steiner must be affiliated with them in some way. I mean, I don't know if they have Legends deals or what, but they got in the Hall of Fame, and usually they put people in the Hall of Fame that has Legends deal, and that podcast has an affiliation with WWE. That they get a lot of WWE guys on there. So So I just find that was the most. I'm not surprised at all because I think it's true. I think Scott Steiner is a truthful guy. I don't know myself if Hogan is racist. Knobs seemed very racist to me. And Knobs is one of his best friends. I've had personal experiences with Knobs. So from like you and I are friends. I'm not racist. And again, I don't claim to be like a pure person or anything. But I'm just saying I wouldn't hang out with you. Just like I don't talk to Knobs anymore. I haven't talked to him for years. If you were that type of person, because it would be offensive to me. So I would have to assume that he's okay with that type of a person.
Yeah,
So, anyways,
that's
I agree with
reasonable.
Steiner.
Before we leave Steiner, I want to reference, man, one of the first interviews when I was scrolling through YouTube that I saw from the Hannibal TV was that amazing one in the car with Steiner, and I've been fortunate enough in the shows that I've run to have some pretty long car rides with guys too. Harry Smith, great guy, and my good friend Nunzio. Shout out to little Guido, recently had his birthday. But that interview, he seems like a very honest individual. What was, and fans, if you haven't seen that interview, search it up here on the Hannibal TV. But what was that experience like?
Well, that was actually the third time we used Scott Steiner in Great North Wrestling, I think. And it was at the peak of his anger against TNA. And I remember this was before I was really doing shoot interviews. That was originally supposed to be for a DVD, which that's a story in itself. But one of the reasons I got into posting stuff on YouTube to begin with was I had a guy that I had made a bunch of interview DVDs with that never put them out. And I ended up having to get that footage back legally. But anyways, I got this footage back after it was supposed to have been released on DVD, and I just threw it up on YouTube before shoot interviews on YouTube were even a popular thing. And that just exploded. But yeah, that was just basically no different than the conversation we had the time before that I had picked him up. But this time there was a camera there. Yeah, because it's funny. It's like he looked at the questions, and it's like it was all the questions I wanted to ask, about as controversial as you can get, and he was just like threw the question sheet and just spoke his mind. The one thing though I do remember about that, when I was driving on the way back, by the way, I got a speeding ticket.
Oh
I do
shit!
remember that in Rockland, Ontario, because we were driving back from Hawkesbury, a town that has a horrible mayor, by the way. Horrible mayor. You guys should not elect him again. He's biased against English wrestling companies. Legit. But the the thing about that, I'm just driving, and then I just mentioned something about Ric Flair, and he's just like, fuck Ric Flair, fuck. I think I remember the show. Something I said when you and Flair had the showdown, and I used the word showdown. There's no fucking showdown, and I just remember I wasn't expecting him to go off like that. So I was just like, oh, did I hit a nerve? But that I like Scott Steiner. Everyone's gonna say that. Uh, but I actually liked him because he did the interviews he was told to do to promote it, where a lot of them don't. He was reliable. He worked really hard in all of his matches. Like, he literally went 15 to 25 minutes in all three of the matches he had. He did not phone it in. And he was nice. There's no doubt we need guys like the Steiners back there now to weed out the people that don't belong. But at this point, it's just a different business, and there's too many people that don't belong. There wouldn't be anyone left if you had guys like the Signers there playing tricks. But they had some really bad tricks too, supposedly, with
Yeah,
the pencil in the butt to some of the people and stuff. But the one thing I will say, didn't Scott didn't really confirm or deny it. The one story I would like to ask more people about, and I've asked Jacques Rougeau, kind of denied it. He said he changed the subject to saying it was to a Ludwig Borga story. another Dark Side of the Ring guy. Pierre Carl Ouellet told me this story that supposedly the Steiners had taped up Dink to a pole on a
Oh,
European tour in the lunchroom. And
oh,
they were like throwing stuff at the little guy, and he's like, no, please for me, blah,
yeah.
blah, 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 blah. And everyone's just laughing at this. And this is like a normal day in the WWE back then. I guess you go into the lunchroom, there's a midget, which, by the way, Angel Medina and I might be going to a midget wrestling show in a couple weeks
Well,
here in
that would be a
Canada.
throwback experience. Yeah, they did confirm that, or
Well, I'll just
Disco.
finish the story there. Sorry, what happened was the Dink thing wasn't the thing. Apparently, Jacques Rougeau came in, and he was friends with Dink, who was really a French wrestler called Tiger Jackson. And Rougeau took an apple and threw the apple at Steiner right at his head, but it missed his head and it exploded like right above his head. It hit a pole, and the whole lunchroom went quiet. And then everyone just kind of walked away. There was no, I think Jacques still had the people thought he was connected with the mafia, and he had that whole Dynamite Kid thing on him where the Steiners were just like, we're not gonna, it's not worth it. But it's funny, Steiner admitted to remembering the food fight. Pierre Carl Ouellet is very explicit in his details of that. And Jacques said it was Bam Bam Bigelow picking on Dink and not the Steiners. So there might be some confusion. I would like there to be more clarification on that story in the future.
Yeah, Disco Inferno confirmed in numerous interviews that the Steiners were fond of duct tape, so that certainly checks out. Brendan, I echo your sentiments. I met Scott Steiner here in that was probably 10 years ago now, 11 years ago, and he was a really excellent guy. I didn't know what to expect given the old Big Papa Pump persona, but yeah, I found him to be an excellent guy to meet and converse with. It's too bad he's not wrestling anymore.
And by the way, Vince Russo uncovered something, and I know Disco had said some things that he didn't really research about me at some point. So I'll be happy. I'll be happy to bring this up. I think it was you that was asking. You wanted to use him in Canada or something at one point, and he was saying he couldn't get to Canada. And it was interesting because we were thinking, oh, he must have a speeding ticket or something. And then Vince Russo, who must not get along with him or something now, brought up on a recent podcast on this channel that he actually had like an illegal gambling ring going on in Vegas, supposedly. But the interesting thing is, I looked it up. I guess there was drugs in the house
Oh,
when he was actually raided or something. So I don't know what the final. Obviously, the outcome involved. I guess you can't get back into Canada, so he probably wasn't exonerated. But I don't know if how many of the charges they kept, how many charges they dropped, but it had to do with gambling and drugs and stuff. And if Disco hadn't talked shit about me, I wouldn't remind people about that.
well, that's interesting because I know he's been pretty open about his gambling issues, but I did not know that there were narcotics involved. And yeah, if he went down for that, he would be the term is inadmissible to Canada for a period of time, and it's not an insignificant period of time. But I don't think Disco does much anyway to warrant extensive travel. But that is true. We were looking at bringing him in at one point. Next story, Hannibal, you brought to my attention again, but Matt Hardy made a statement that once he and his brother Jeff's run in NXT is over, that WWE has plans for him. Is that going to be the stereotypical one last great run for the Hardy Boys, one of the greatest tag teams of, well, at least top 10 of all time in many's opinion?
Oh, by the way, sorry, I'll get into that. I just want to say I looked it up. There was a raid for this gambling ring that he had. 45,000 in cash was seized, as well as drugs. So
Oh boy.
who knows? I'll ask him about that if I ever do another interview with him. I'll be back in Vegas, actually the first week of April. But the Hardys, I'm just glad that it's another case of people that weren't used in AEW and could have been used a lot better, being used and making a difference in WWE. I heard they got like the biggest pop at the NXT at the Madison Square Garden Theater. And again, AEW is paying guys that nobody gives a crap about, like Swerve Strickland, millions and millions and millions of dollars. Which, by the way, as I said, his agent brags to me about how rich his agent is from his cut of that all the time. So maybe that's why I take it so personal. But I don't think that guy's worth anything more than an NXT talent, because AEW doesn't even beat NXT ratings. And it's just nice to see that once again NXT is beating AEW's ratings week after week, and the Hardys are now part of that. But now they're moving on to the main roster, apparently. And just further proof, this whole TNA and WWE thing, TNA WWE, you can pretty much put it in one sentence now.
Mm-hmm. Well, since you brought up Swerve, he did an interview recently where he was talking about that he signed a 5-year deal and he's locked up there until 2029. And he really puts over Tony. Says, this is a job. I have frustrations here and there, but I work through those frustrations better here than other places anywhere else in the world, be it Lucha Underground, WWE, or NXT. Tony Khan and me have always worked through frustration. So he's set, it seems, for a while.
Yeah, I mean, the rumor is, I mean, for basically a nobody, 4 or 5 million a year, a guy that would be lower to mid card in WWE. So good for him. But apparently WWE, and I'll look it up. Yeah, according to Wrestling Inc., this makes no sense. It's just bizarre. Tony Khan has made Swerve Strickland one of the highest paid wrestlers in the business. The contract apparently caught attention from WWE, who commented that AEW paid above market value for him, which is bad for business. So that's funny. It is bad. I mean, they don't care about business, but to pay when WWE is not even really interested in the guy. Like, look at MJF. He's confirmed that he's making like 5+ million a year. He wrestled 4 times last year. Would WWE pay him anywhere near that? Or would they even use him as a top guy at this point? No. And MJF is better than Swerve. Like, he's more over the Swerve. To me, Swerve is like a mid-card guy to lower mid-card guy.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring up MJF, because a lot of people are talking about how his value has been hurt through the way that he's been booked and wrestling so infrequently. But this kind of dovetails nicely into sports writer Bill Simmons in the US. He's quite a popular figure, covers mainstream sports. He has a podcast, and he said this week that the Jacksonville Jaguars, their struggle is on Tony Khan spending too much time with AEW, which ironically we hear in the reverse in terms of AEW's fortunes. He says, I don't think the Jaguars will ever get it. And one of the reasons they'll never get it is because the owner's son, who runs the team, also runs AEW and writes all the scripts for it every week. And I just don't think they're on the ball, is my take. So not praise for Tony in the NFL realm either. What do you make of that comment? Probably true.
That, I mean, he's just, we talked about this before. He's just got way too much to do to pay proper attention to anything. And those are each like full-time jobs if you're going to do them properly. Just running one AEW show is a full-time job. And by the way, WWE, I'm reading Yahoo Sports' comment on Strickland now. They released him in 2021, and they reported to the Wrestling Observer that he was far over what WWE perceived him as market value. So again, WWE released him just a couple of years ago, and they're not even interested. Oh, let's just throw him millions of dollars. I mean, good for him. He's the winner in that. He's the winner in that. It's not AEW. AEW, have they grown at all, or are they just sinking as far as interest, attendance? They're going to smaller venues now. You don't hear much good about them, and now even NFL people are making fun of it. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's an interesting business model in quotes, if you can call it a business. I think the only good part about well, aside from Swerve, is hopefully he brings his friend and on-screen manager Prince Nana along, because Nana is tight with, you referenced him already, one King of the Streets, Kingpin Angel Medina, and he's going to come on and do an interview with the three of us on the Shooting from the Hip podcast. So Nana's a guy that's paid his dues. So if he gets the rub there and gets some of that money, that's great. It doesn't seem like there's an
I'd be
end.
interested to know, and I mean, good for him if he's doing the podcast with you guys. I like both of you guys, obviously. I'm not familiar with him other than he's the manager, but I would love to know what he's getting as the manager of a guy that's that over. He might be the most overpaid guy because there's people making more, but like as far as actual value, I don't know. Because I mean, even the girl that's in the Mildred Burke movie, did they even use her since the movie came out?
I don't think so.
She
Camille,
hasn't
you're
wrestled since
talking about?
November. Yeah, she hasn't wrestled since November, and that was a decent movie.
Was it
But
the greatest ever?
no, the last 25 minutes, I was looking at my watch, but it was just way too long. It was over 2 hours long, but I enjoyed the movie. I don't look it it was long at the time, but overall, when I look back at it, it was nice. And I think if they advertised it better, more people would have come out. What? And again, I'll disagree with Meltzer on something. I mean, Meltzer, by the way, likes wrestlers that I don't like Will Ospreay and stuff. So I don't agree with him on everything. I agree with him on some things. But he was saying one of the reasons why the movie bombed, it made less than 500,000 at the box office in the US last weekend, which is terrible. I think it made less than 500 per theater, which is
Wow.
really bad. And I was the only one in my theater. But Meltzer had commented that he thinks that not enough people knew who Mildred Burke was to care. I didn't know who she was. I just went because I am a wrestling fan and I do like going to movies, but there's not that many movies that catch my attention. I'm like, oh, wrestling movie. I'm gonna go. That sounds fun. And I had fun. I ate my popcorn. I ate my hot dog. I liked going to the theater for the first time since the Von Erichs movie. So I don't think it was people didn't know who she was. I think people just did not know about the movie.
Yeah, in the Observer that just came out, Dave said that it was more historically accurate than the Iron Claw, and mentioned, gave it props for that. It's probably, not to do with the fact that, it was an obscure topic, because I think not a lot of people really knew what or who in the mainstream perspective the Von Erichs were, and it did decent box office. Which one did you like better out of the two? And I bet you I can predict.
Yeah, well, 100% the Mildred Burke. But the one thing I will say, which I just brought up, I also I've been doing interviews about the Von Erichs forever. I wouldn't say I was necessarily a Von Erichs fan, but I was a fan of World Class and the
Mm,
Freebirds,
mm,
and I was a fan of Kerry Von Erich, and I am friends with some of the Von Erichs. So, and by the way, where the hell are the Von Erichs who are signed to AEW? But like I knew the story, so it really angered me when I was seeing some of the key stuff they were leaving out. Whereas this one, there were some things that pissed me off, like the way they were like breaking kayfabe more than they would have in those days. And there was some stuff that I didn't like, but overall, there was nothing in it that absolutely said this did not happen. This ruins the whole movie for me. like I had in the Von Erich. And everyone's different. I know you liked the Von Erich movie, but there was just too much that didn't match for my taste.
Yeah, and the reason I think I liked the Von Erich movie was because I made a conscious decision to put aside the quote unquote wrestling historian in me and just treat it as a piece of entertainment. But yeah, there were some major gaffes in that movie, like Chris Von Erich being out of it. And I know your great interviews with Lance. By the way, Lance Von Erich, he said he didn't like it either, and he didn't agree with Chris being out of it. But perhaps the biggest fault for the Iron Claw for me was Jeremy Allen White as Kerry Von Erich. Just couldn't get past that. But anyway, I've yet to see the Mildred Burke one.
And because I don't think it was released in Canada in theater. And by the way, a lot of people have commented recently on my clips of Lance Von Erich. Lance Von Erich is my new favorite Von Erich. So I'm glad, honestly. It's like I don't like Vince Russo, and Vince Russo is very irritable in some ways. But like at some point, you hear so much about Vince Russo before meeting him as a person, you honestly don't like him, and then you meet him, and it's like, for a wrestler, he's not so bad. He's at least he'll uphold his bookings, and he'll do what he says and stuff, as far as showing up on time for interviews and stuff. So he'll rub off on you. But for Lance, like I was expecting someone totally different before I became familiar with him and realized he's a very nice guy, very cool guy, and a guy that could have been a much bigger star in the US if he had kept pushing it for the US. But he got over like crazy in South America. Or is it South America? Too many
South
kids.
Africa.
South Africa, yeah. So if you're going to be the top guy in South Africa at a time where that meant something, you're doing movies and being on soap operas too, why go somewhere where that top spot isn't guaranteed?
Yeah, for sure. It's too bad that he didn't.
If you're banging Bo Derek in South Africa, why go somewhere where it's not guaranteed? There was a few celebrity beauties that he name dropped there.
Yeah, how can you argue with that? It's just too bad, I guess, when Eric Bischoff approached him in Florida, I think it was 95 or in and around there, that he didn't take advantage of that opportunity. But yeah, excellent interviews. Fans, if you haven't seen them, go out of your way and search them up.
He has one of the best looks. And if you look at him from like, not all of some pictures from the book. I don't know if you've read the book, Lance, by chance. Some of the pictures aren't online, and you look at this guy's physique. I mean, there's no surprise rather, why he was training with the Warrior. They had very similar top physiques.
Yeah, and still in good shape as an older man too. So hats off to him. Want to talk about next about a Great North Wrestling veteran and a guy that really impressed me. I thought in the show just around COVID, I think it was 2020, Hannibal, in Kingston, Ontario, that he had the match next to yours, of course, against that filthy, disgusting rule breaker, Rene Dupree. I thought that Speedball Mike Bailey tore the house down in his match at the Great North Wrestling show last in Kingston, and he debuted with AEW, and supposedly the fans are impressed with his victory. And he's in the I'm sorry, I didn't follow this very much, but he's in a international eliminator tournament, setting up a potential challenge for Kenny Omega at AEW Dynasty. Really nice guy too. I thought again, he really had, there we go. I thought he really had a good mind for the business. I had an opportunity to talk to him there. I was very impressed with him all the way around, and I was glad to see that he's finally getting a shot. And you know what? No disrespect either to Jeremy Prophet. I know they've worked together a lot, but man, fans, if you haven't seen that match, check it out. The speed and the precision and the just the sheer skill displayed in that match was memorable. it was a highlight next to Bill Velichka going through a table, courtesy of the Blood Hunter. But Hannibal, what do you think? Do you think Speedball is going to get lost in the AEW? I don't want to say shuffle, but there's Bill, but undertow, and also a disreputable person, President Andrews there.
And there's Alicia too, someone else in AEW that they never use.
Good point.
MJF's girlfriend.
Yeah, very good point.
But here's one thing I remember about this, and this was where, remember, this was COVID, guys, and I had rented this arena based on a number of, this was just after COVID. What was it, 2021 September?
21, yeah.
And like I had rented this arena based on a number of people they were going to let me have. Then they changed it to a number. Like it was, I knew I was already going to lose money and was just going to do it to get a video, and everyone was anxious to like put on a show. Then they changed the number to an even lower number. So I added a second show in the afternoon because we couldn't even have the number of people that we sold for the last show. And then it was Jeremy and his girlfriend against Mike Bailey and one of his students. And they were supposed, again, this is the problem when you're wrestling and booking, because Jeremy and his girlfriend were supposed to lose the tag team match on the first show. Then Jeremy was supposed to win this one. And Jeremy told Mike that he was supposed to win both matches. But it's like, that's one thing, Jeremy, and I know you're going to see this. I love you. I wouldn't say I love you. You were one of my closest friends in wrestling. But it's like, why didn't you just tell me you didn't want to lose the first match? Like, I don't know. I just find it weird that like you would beat him when you're going to beat him in the second match anyways. It would have made, to me, it would have given more heat. Mike Bailey, he was very nice here. Very nice, easy to deal with, respectful. One of the most over talents in Canada. Do I like all the leg slapping that he does? No. Is he a legitimate martial artist? Yes. Will he make any difference in AEW's popularity? No. But here's what I would do. I would sign him, but I would cut the fat, just like Josh Alexander, who they've supposedly signed now. There's two new guys that can actually, that like are good, but you have so many guys, like get rid of a bunch. Because he's better than your other Quebec guys by far. Don't they have 2 or 3 other Quebec guys that aren't over at all? And they've had their chances. Like, cut the fat. Now you got him. That's just my opinion on it. So again, both of those matches with Bailey and Prophet are on the Hannibal TV. And I think, honestly, this is my honest opinion, I would hire Jeremy over Mike because he, from a wrestling standpoint, because he's thicker, he's also a martial artist, he hits harder, and he's a little bit better promos. I like them both. I would still use them over most of the Canadian talent they have in AEW. Like, for instance, they're both way better than that Evil Uno guy who is drizzling shits and an insult to wrestling with his cosplay crap that he does on the Canadian indie scene.
Yeah, not even close.
I think where Jeremy's issue is his attitude, because there's no other reason why he hasn't been signed. So anyways, I hope Jeremy gets it because he's been at it and he deserves it, but I do think it's the attitude issues.
Well, as you said, he doesn't really like to lose, but is an incredible talent. Could you just pull that back up again, Hannibal?
Let me find it again. But yeah, I shut down that page.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, as good a talent as Speedball is, that he nothing has been shown to date in terms of the way that AEW and Tony Khan are booking these folks to allow them to get over, as you pointed out many times. When you're on TV 1 week and then off for years. Okay, stop that right there. And can you go in on the guy by the door there at the do you see it?
Again, just to show, yeah, I mean, The other thing is like, why do you keep adding people without firing people when it's like you don't have enough over people now? So our solution is to add more. And again, I think they should add him. I just think make some cuts, get rid of some fat. And yeah, Jack, you're okay. There you are. Hold on. You're behind Jeremy, who I'll give him this. He has nice biceps. You have a mask on in the
Yes.
back. That was actually the first day that I met you because you were from this area and you wanted to help out and you were a big help that day. You provided the duct tape. Speaking of duct tape for the ropes, because there was an issue with the ring ropes. So we duct taped them.
That was a very good event, and I know you got bamboozled there in terms of the number that the city told you, and then we were down. That's believe it or not, all of the people that we could get in there because we were told, I think what, Hannibal, it was 200, and then right before the show it was 50.
It was 200, then 150, then 100, then 50. They kept changing it. Yeah. But anyway, it was frustrating. And then we negotiated. There is fans in the stands. We were allowed to have 50 on the floor, 50 in the stands. And the stands, you can't see because we didn't shoot them because there's only 50. So in the end, there was 100 total, 50 on the floor, 50 in the stands. But it was frustrating because there's no way. I mean, the insurance alone for this show, because unlike in the US where you don't always need insurance, I think insurance was like even more, I think, because of COVID. I think it was like $700 or $800 for insurance alone. So.
It's not cheap to run shows, but yeah, this was definitely a highlight. And again, the highlight for me was seeing Bill Velichka brutalized by the Blood Hunter with his jacket ripped. I enjoyed that. That was great.
There you go. And Rene Dupree bloody. Let's see if I can look that clip up of me finishing off for Rene. But is there anything else you wanted to mention while I'm doing that?
Yeah, one last story for the week is the WWE ID program, which I really haven't paid a lot of attention to, but I know you're familiar with it and up to speed. That's the program where they're looking at talent, athletes, etc., and bringing them in. According to a report, the contract that Gabe Sapolsky has put into place with promoters. Oh, there we go. Let's stop on that for a minute.
Let's see how bloody. There's Alicia again.
It's interesting. Rene Dupree likes to strike managers, and he gave me a concussion, which we all know about. But I enjoyed this a lot, actually. That once he met an individual like the Blood Hunter, it was pretty much game over. And this is a very brutal match.
I'll tell you a story about this door, by the way. This has a tie-in to New Jack, who I just interviewed Mustafa this week, who I really like Mustafa. I consider him a friend.
Great guy.
A legitimate friend. You can see I busted the hell out of Rene there. But for this door, why we used a door here is after I did my interview with New Jack, which I didn't know he was about to die, but I had paid him to do an hour and a half interview, and I was expecting your typical New Jack interview, right? But he was just giving like one-word answers, and it only went like 50 minutes. And I got so mad after the interview that I actually punched the door to my office, which is why I had the doors poster on it. There was a hole in it. So in the end, I'm just like, well, why don't I replace the door to my office and we'll use this one in a match. But yeah, the tie-in was I had to get rid of that door because of New Jack. He pissed me off. But in the end, it may have had to do with health issues, why he was giving short answers. I thought it was I thought he was just being rude to me at the time. And as I said, I punched my door as I was walking out the office because I was so pissed off because I paid him for the interview. And I didn't think, in the end, it ended up being his second last interview I think he ever did.
Yeah, I think he was struggling at the end with CTE and getting his words out. But before we leave that
That
show,
was me with the mask, K9. Thank you.
and not Johnny Canine, unfortunately. Before we leave this video, I would encourage fans to search up the first Blood Hunter match where of that show, where I had the honor of getting a table, and you put two wrestlers through that table in a similar sort of spot in the corner. You remember that? I take it because splinters went everywhere. Do you remember that?
Yeah, why? Well, we may as well pull it up. Why not?
Why not?
We got time. I'll get it. I don't even remember this match. I remember one thing actually. Let's go to the drop kick. The guy that I drop kicked was very mad because he didn't put his hands up, and I drop kicked him in the face. Let's see here. Let's.
Oh, your fault.
No, let's show that. I mean, I told him before. It's like I'm 290 pounds to get my feet up is high enough to drop kick you. I'm gonna have to aim full force. And then after he's like, "You kicked me full force to the face." I'm like, "I told you I was gonna have to." Because when you weigh as much as I do, you really have to. There's no way to fake a drop kick. You can put your hands up, but yeah, I don't even remember where we found these guys. But
you mauled them. I think.
What were you going to mention, anyways? Because that's all I remember from this match. And Rene Dupree interfered at the end of it.
Yeah, and then I had to run in and separate.
Oh, here's the drop. Here's what he was complaining about, or I think it's coming up in a second. He thought that there you go. There you go. That's what he had a problem after, but I'm like, man, what do you want me to do? I think I gave him 50. I gave him 50 extra bucks. And there you go.
You are a benevolent employer. But fans, yeah, look up this show because it's got some very good highlights on it. And I found this to be an excellent handicap squash match. Here's the table right there. Yeah.
The funny thing is, we just found that stuff, I think, at a dumpster outside or something. This is independent wrestling for you guys. We walk around the arena before, and we look what's in the dumpster.
Watch. You know what? Actually, though, Hannibal, I remember I brought this in my truck all the way from Napanee. This board.
Oh, was that yours? Oh, yeah. There you go. It blew up.
Yeah. The video.
Where did you find it?
Pardon me?
Where did you find it? I thought you had found it in a dumpster.
No. I got it from. I've got a connection at a hardware store, and they basically had it as a sale deal. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. It was interesting getting it up to 401 though.
I think this was actually Alicia's last announcing job in wrestling before she went to AEW.
Oh yeah, there were two. That's right. Okay. Look at that. Just this is what I remember in the end. Yeah. I kind of forgot that other table, but this part I do remember here.
As I said, I just basically remember the drop kick.
Watch this, and then you pick up the other buddy. Yeah. This is impressive. I marked out a little bit on security there. I'm not gonna lie. And there's Jeff Hoover.
The gentleman Jeff Hoover, I'll call him, since you've actually you're gentleman now, right? You're not jumping.
No, he's jumping Jeff Hoover, and he's diminutive, so that fits. Look at that. Boom.
But I will be back in the ring against Super Crazy May 3rd with you manage me this time at the ECW arena, and you're going to be interviewing a bunch of people that are going to be on that event
for the WrestleCon. It starts at noon.
There we go.
And the WrestleCon goes for 4 hours. Going to get some great interviews, but I think this is good for the fans to see that what you're capable of, because Super Crazy, and I don't want to take anything away from him, ECW legend, doing some incredible stuff still. at 50 so years of age, but as fearless as he ever was. But you're going to ground him, and that's the part that excites me. The hate that we're getting all the time about being Canadian patriots and super crazy, of course, so over in that ECW arena. But I think super crazy, when this is all said and done, is going to be off to a local medical facility. So for the fans that aren't aware of what Hannibal the Death Dealer can do, that was the Blood Hunter, but he's coming back. He's training like an MF, and he's going to be more destructive than ever if you can get your mind around that.